Привit and greetings from lovely Lviv. I'm here in the center. We've got the very famous Opera House of Lviv behind me. And just this morning, we had Russian rocket attacks targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure, not just here in Lviv, but across Ukraine.
Yeah, this particular round from Russia was about 57, joint mixture of missiles and drones. As you say, range of targets from the city of Kiev, their explosion inside, Lviv across near you.
And back in the summer of 2022, I made a video posing the question whether you should consider coming to Ukraine during this war, the Russo-Ukrainian war. Obviously, the extended invasion started back in February 2022. It's been over 2 years. So in today's video, I'm going to pose the question again, I guess, which is whether you should consider coming to Ukraine in 2024. Many guys have been asking me this, in particular in the last 6 months. Of my clients, I would say that the ones that are coming back to Ukraine normally have a Ukrainian wife or fiance or significant other girlfriend, but there are more single guys now asking me in the last couple of months, so I think this is an important time to make this video. So let's get into it. Поехали! So normally I'm filming when I'm here in Ukraine on the shores of the Black Sea in Odessa, and I'm actually on my way back there because I was with a client. We've been going looking at the alternatives to being here in Ukraine. He's a client who came with me actually to Kharkiv in 2021, and we were looking alternatives to obviously being here in Ukraine. He's not comfortable with the risk level, so we were in Warsaw in Poland, Vilnius in Lithuania, and Riga in Latvia. Now I'm on my way back to Odessa, hence I've stopped here in Lviv. That brings me to my first question that poses, well, who should be considering coming here to Ukraine? Because I do have clients who have significant others from Ukraine, and they've been here looking at real estate, also getting residency in Ukraine. They have a specific purpose, right? Because their in-laws to be are actually here in Ukraine. They want to spend some time closer to them. And other people who I've met here in Ukraine who have a specific purpose are those who are helping with the humanitarian effort or with the military effort. Obviously, you can volunteer, come here to Ukraine and help the people in time of need or help the military with defending the country. A good example of a friend of mine who has a specific purpose is one of my former classmates from my graduate school in Washington, D.C. in international relations. He actually came here for over a month to learn Ukrainian. He did a great job at that, and he is actually working in anti-corruption, and he sees that as being good for his employment opportunities, because obviously here with the EU accession for Ukraine, they are going to need to do more work in anti-corruption or to pass that benchmark for EU accession in the future. So there are lots of opportunities going forward. Ukraine, obviously, you're probably aware that Ukraine has a massive agricultural sector, for example. So you might be working that. I met also a Polish guy who works with the agricultural sector who's come here to Ukraine. And obviously learning Ukrainian going forward, because not so many foreigners speak it, is going to give you a real advantage, and no better way of practicing those language skills than being here in Ukraine. So I think, in summary, you should decide why you are coming to Ukraine at all. I mean, if you're just doing it on a whim, well, probably dissuade you of that notion, because it's, you know, if you're not going to be comfortable under air alert, then don't come here, basically, right? There are other places in Europe that you can go to. You got neighboring Poland, you got the Baltic states, other places that I go with my clients, as I said, where you don't have that inconvenience. I guess there are going to be some adventure travelers who really want that experience of seeing the country war, who are curious about Ukraine. Then just be cognizant of the risk level, which is the next thing I'm going to get into. When you have an air alert, like this morning we had Russian rocket attacks, you need to know when you book your accommodation here, where is the nearest shelter? Where am I going to go if there is a serious Russian rocket attack? It can also be drones, there are missiles that come, and maybe they strike some military infrastructure, but unfortunately, a lot of time they hit civilian objects, as we say in Ukrainian, or buildings here in the center of Lviv or in Odessa. They hit the cathedral in the city center, for example. And also when rockets are shot down, then the debris has to fall somewhere, and that could be into an apartment. Actually, one landed in the apartment building beside mine in Odessa. So not very comfortable situation when you wake up in the morning and see that it was like maybe 100 meters away. So you need to know where you're going to go if there is an air alert. And not everybody runs to the air raid shelters every time that there's an air alert. You need to have apps downloaded on your phone. That's what I recommend. One is it'll just be the air alerts in general, and then other normally Telegram channels that then give you a better assessment of what that risk is. It could be just that some Russian fighter bombers have taken off somewhere in Russia and they suspect they might fire a rocket, or there's actually one incoming, and then you need to make that assessment yourself whether you want to go to an air shelter or not. There are times that I go and other times that I don't go to the air shelter depending on the risk level. That is a personal thing to do, because there are going to be probably at the moment an air alert at least once a day, if not several times a day. I actually stay in a building which has an underground car park, and that is the nearest air shelter to me, is to go down to -2, for example. But if you don't have that in the building you're staying in, you need to know where the nearest shelter is and how long it's going to take you to get there, and then make those assessments about what you should do in the case of an air alert. Talking about safety in Ukraine, there is next to no petty crime that I have heard of. Basically, it's extremely safe. Ukraine, before this invasion, was not a dangerous country. It did have an issue in terms of male romance tourists. There was an issue with them getting scammed, like you have in a lot of places in the region. I would say that most of the scammers have left. The establishments that used to run those scams have closed down, and I haven't heard of even any petty crime in Ukraine. So it's actually very safe otherwise. And to give you a comparison, like the most popular destination at the moment for the passport bros are usually young guys, or maybe not just young guys, but men who travel, usually single men. Number one destination I see talked about is Colombia and Medellin, the city in Colombia that has an awful reputation for not just foreigners getting robbed, drugged and robbed. We have the scopolamine phenomenon, right? So these guys they go on a date typically, and then they get drugged, and then they wake up a day or two later and everything has been stolen from their apartment, and basically they're left with nothing. But it's laptops, obviously cash. You become apparently very compliant under this drug, and they even get you to give the passwords to their bank accounts and all this stuff. On top of that, I think it's 43 foreign tourists were murdered in Colombia in 2023. In short, if you go to Colombia as a single male tourist, it is actually more dangerous being there. You're more likely to be killed by a thief who's probably drugged you. Definitely a lot more likely you're going to get robbed, but even that you're going to die than being here, say, in a Ukrainian city like Lviv or Kyiv or Odessa, obviously far from the front line. So that's just something to put it in perspective, that if you're the type of guy who's willing to go to Medellin, well, probably the risk level is actually lower here in Ukraine if you were just in one of these big cities. I don't recommend that you go to a city that is close to the front line. That includes Kharkiv, because it is very close to the Russian border. And unfortunately, Russia has been striking the city quite frequently in the last few weeks. In particular, cities like Kyiv for now and Odessa are probably higher risk than been here in Lviv, which is in the very west of Ukraine and the furthest away from Russian-controlled territory or Russia itself. So here at a memorial for the Heavenly 100 in Lviv. These were the 100 people, more or less, who died during the Euromaidan Revolution, the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, and it has some observation decks looking out a little bit over the city of Lviv. And I realize that I forgot to mention the price level here in Ukraine at the moment. It is probably the cheapest part of Europe to come to, because the currency, the hryvnia, has lost maybe between 30 and 40% of its value over the last 2 years. Basically, if you're coming here with euro or pounds or yen or dollars, then it will go very far here in Ukraine. To give you a comparison, when I was with my client recently in Warsaw, Riga, and in Vilnius, the prices were probably at least 50% higher, maybe even 70% higher than here in Lviv. And okay, Kyiv is going to be a bit higher than Lviv, in particular for short-term accommodation. Clearly, Ukraine doesn't have so many tourists, and a lot of those apartments that were bought to rent out on Airbnb as investments, well, they are not so full compared to the more touristic destination, more popular touristic destinations in the region I dub New Europe. So say Poland or the 3 Baltic states or maybe Romania, then yeah, here your money will go a lot further. That's just another thing to consider, and another reason to support Ukrainian businesses. It's actually going to be easier on your wallet as well.
experience.
So if you are planning to come here to Ukraine, what is it going to be like for you? I guess another reason to come is to show support to Ukrainians. Moral support by being here as a foreigner. You're definitely going to be a rarity nowadays. Obviously, very few tourists come to Ukraine with the war. You'll also be helping Ukrainian local businesses when you obviously go and purchase something or go to a restaurant, a cafe, or wherever you go. Will help also in that way the country. So basically, most things work here nearly all the time. So electricity, in spite of Russia's best attempts to take it out, in most cities it works. Your cards are going to work, ironically, unlike in Russia, your international cards. Water, heating, electricity, internet, everything is working more or less pretty well, with some rare exceptions when things get blown up and then it gets taken out. And the city happened once to me in Lviv around New Year's Eve, but in general, life goes on and most things are open. I would say that nearly all my favorite restaurants, cafes, bars are open. Fortunately, very few of them have closed down, with one or two exceptions. I think one of the other biggest differences is going to be curfew. We have a curfew from midnight until 5 a.m. here in Ukraine, so you can not be on the street without a good reason. And the main difference is that everywhere is closed, so places close up in anticipation of that happening at midnight. So probably it's going to be hard to go in anywhere after, say, about 10:30, 10 o'clock. A lot of places will be closed. And that is probably the biggest inconvenience, other than obviously the Russian rocket attacks here, is the fact that things in the evening are pretty closed. So as a result, people tend to go out and socialize earlier than they would have before 2022, because places are going to close up pretty early. So think about, if you are going to socialize, probably going out, you would need to be thinking of heading out to about 6 o'clock, as opposed to what I would normally do about 8 o'clock. So that is the way things work, but most places will be open. There will be terraces. The weather is getting great here. Yeah, everything kind of works in spite of what Russia is attempting to do here by basically trying to occupy all of Ukraine, and they have been, of course, unsuccessful so far. So it is kind of remarkable, the level of resistance. So back in the summer 2022, when I made my video from Kyiv about the situation here, then there was noticeably a lot fewer women, as you'd expect, and children, because they had evacuated in February and March 2022. But many of those people have returned to Ukraine with Russia's failure to seize most of the country. There are cities like Lviv. A lot of people have relocated from the cities further east, and they have gone to Kyiv, Odessa here in Lviv, other cities in the west which are further away from the front line in particular. And that gender imbalance has corrected itself, at least from what I see on the streets. I don't really notice a big difference between the number of men and women, at least just casually walking around here in the city center of the big cities, as I say, Lviv, Odessa, and Kyiv. So I'm just up here in the center of Lviv. We have one of the iconic buildings in the city center just behind me here. Let me show it to you. Lviv Town Hall. There you go. It's also been in many other videos about Lviv over the years. I'll link a few of those, my vlogs from this beautiful city. So if you are considering coming here, take those off. So if you are considering coming here to Lviv or Odessa or Kyiv or another city in Ukraine, and you want some extra advice, down below in the description to this video is a link to my consulting. I'm your man, your Irish boy on the ground here in Ukraine. I am known as the insider for this broader region. As I say, mainly I've been bringing my in-person clients to other countries in the region. So some of those are Poland, 3 Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, neighboring Moldova, very close to Odessa, Mama, and all the way over just off the Central Asian steppes, Kazakhstan. For those of you who are considering coming here to Ukraine, stay safe, take best precautions. Of course, we can't predict where any rocket is going to land here, unfortunately. A rocket doesn't discriminate between whether you are a civilian or member of the military. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And Russia seems intent on firing them and continuing this war of aggression against Ukraine until, well, presumably they're never going to stop until they're actually defeated. And if you do decide to come here to Ukraine in 2024, Well, first of all, I'll give you a big thumbs up for making that decision, and obviously make it with a proper risk assessment in mind. Don't do something that you're not comfortable with, but you will be helping people here either morally or at least a little bit financially by supporting local businesses. And if you can, publicize, document what you're doing, put it online, and keep Ukraine in people's minds, because obviously after 2 years of this extended invasion by Russia, people's attention spans, they move on to other things. But Ukraine obviously needs values, first of all, support from its allies, and needs more of that to continue the fight against Russian aggression and eventually win this war. So on that note, I will bid you harna večera, pleasant evening from lovely Lviv in Western Ukraine.
SAR Experience.